This is a case so disturbing that the FBI wish it would be forgotten. One of the most terrifying cases ever recorded. Known as the most sadistic serial killers in American history, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris didn't just commit horrific acts. They recorded every moment of their crimes. In their silver van, known as Murder Mac, they kept a kit equipped with torture tools. They used these to inflict unimaginable pain on their victims, capturing every scream on a cassette recorder. The recordings were so disturbing that they caused people in court to faint and cry. The haunting nature of the evidence even led a detective on the case to take his own life. The FBI sealed the tape, allowing only forensic students to hear its contents. And it all started in 1977, within the walls of California Men's Colony. Two disturbed minds converged. United by their dark fantasies of kidnapping, rape, and torture, they profited from their horrors, selling stories of their twisted dreams to fellow inmates. Norris admitted to fantasizing about assaulting his own cousin, while Bittaker was obsessed with making these fantasies a reality. Upon release, they immediately bought a silver GMC cargo van, naming it Murder Mac. It was more than a vehicle. It was a mobile chamber of horrors. Inside, they stocked everyday tools, twisted into instruments of terror. Duct tape to silence screams, vice grips and pliers to tear flesh, ice picks to pierce eardrums and reach the brain, hammers to shatter bones, coat hanger wire to strangle, and a cassette recorder to capture every agonizing scream, playing them back as trophies of their brutality. But it didn't start the way they wanted. Their first victim wasn't recorded. No drawn-out torture. And Bittaker later admitted he didn't enjoy it. But every girl that followed was dragged through hours of recorded torture. In June 1979, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris committed their first heinous crime, kidnapping 16-year-old Lucinda Lynn Schaefer as she made her way home from church. They attempted to lure her into their van with offers of marijuana and a ride. But when she resisted, they forced her inside. Once trapped, they assaulted her repeatedly, taking turns, as if her suffering was entertainment. Their hunger for violence and control was just awakening. When Lucinda realized their intent to kill her, she asked for a moment to pray. They laughed at her plea before ending her life using coat hanger wire, looped around her neck, twisted tight with pliers to strangle. After the attack, they disposed of her body by wrapping it in a plastic shower curtain and throwing it off a steep mountain of San Gabriel, hoping that animals would erase all traces. Tragically, her body was never found. But this was only the beginning. What followed would dive deeper into a nightmare of pain and terror. Only 2 weeks later, they picked another girl. This time, it turned into the most violent struggle they'd faced, as Bittaker would later admit. Andrea Hall, 18, was hitchhiking to her boyfriend's house in Manhattan Beach. She accepted a ride from another driver. Bittaker and Norris spotted her and followed that car for several miles. When she got out in Redondo Beach, they moved in. Bittaker offered her a ride. She accepted. Norris was hiding under the seat. Once the doors were locked, he lunged out and attacked her. Andrea fought back, screaming, struggling. There were cars all around them, eyes occasionally glancing at the van. But the windows were heavily tinted. No one could see inside. Still, her screams were loud enough to draw attention. They turned the radio all the way up to drown her out. Inside the van, she was subjected to repeated brutal assaults. Their tools weren't just weapons. They were instruments of control. They twisted pliers to tear her flesh, hammers to break her bones, because pain made her scream louder, and they wanted that. The more she screamed, the more excited they got. Norris later admitted They got more excited when they realized she was a virgin. It made everything feel more raw, more worthy of recording. As he put it, they wanted to capture the purity of her suffering, a cassette recorder to preserve her screams. After hours of torment, Bittaker drove an ice pick into Andrea's ear, a method they believed would pierce the brain. It didn't kill her immediately. They disposed her body in a remote location. And the tape? They played it back like a trophy. But satisfaction never lasted long. Craving more, they struck again. On September 3rd, 1979, they abducted two more girls, 15-year-old Jackie Gilliam and 13-year-old Jacqueline Lamp, known as Leia, while they waited at a bus stop. Offered a car ride, they got inside the van. They played it cool, offering them a beer to break the tension. As they turned to grab it, Norris was already moving. He reached behind the seat and pulled out a bag filled with lead weights. He slammed it into the back of Thierry's heads. They collapsed, unconscious. At one point, Leah briefly regained consciousness. Disoriented but desperate, she fumbled for the van door and managed to open it. They were driving past a public tennis court. People were out playing when suddenly they saw her, a terrified girl trying to escape. Before she could jump, Norris lunged and yanked her back inside. Startled by the onlookers, he leaned out the van window and shouted, "She's just having a bad LSD trip. What can we do?" The van sped off. No one stopped them. And Leah? She was knocked out again. Harder this time. They were tied up and held for 2 days. Repeatedly raped, brutally tortured. They forced her to pose for Polaroids, documenting her fear and suffering. Jackie Gilliam was stabbed in each ear with an ice pick. One of them went so deep, it snapped off inside her skull. When her remains were found, the metal shaft was still embedded in the bone. They had only managed to twist off the knob. She was then strangled, slowly. Leah Lamp, just 13, fought back. Norris beat her with a sledgehammer, at least 7 times. Skull, face, chest, until she died. And their methods grew more sadistic on their last victim. 30 minutes of a girl being tortured to death. The FBI sealed the tape. And to this day, it's considered the most disturbing piece of evidence ever presented in a U.S. courtroom. You hear her sobbing, gasping, choking, begging for them to kill her. And they don't. They laugh. They take turns. They tell her to scream louder. And she does. In court, they played that tape. Veteran detectives left the room. One juror broke down crying. Another juror couldn't take it and had to leave the courtroom shaking. Her name was Shirley Lynette Ledford. She was 16 on Halloween night, 1979. They took their final known victim. She was outside a gas station when Bittaker offered her a ride. What happened next was captured in full. Hours of torture. Screaming, begging, sobbing. She was beaten, raped, mutilated, then strangled. But this time, they wanted a reaction. They didn't hide her. They tossed her body on the front lawn of a random suburban home just before sunrise. They said it would be fun to read about it in the papers. And on Halloween morning, the woman who found her thought it was a mannequin, a Halloween prank, until she saw the blood. But behind the scenes, something was already unraveling. In late 1979, something inside Norris snapped, and he spilled everything to an old prison buddy, Joseph Jackson. But even Jackson couldn't stomach it. Horrified, he went straight to the cops. When the police raided Norris's place, they found nearly 500 Polaroids, pictures of young girls, some of them victims. But when they searched the killer van, Murder Mac, the photos were gone. All except one thing, Shirley's tape. And that was all they needed. After 5 sadistic murders, justice crawled. Bittaker rotted on death row for 40 years, dying comfortably of old age in 2019. Norris followed a year later, never facing the full weight of what he did. But the evil they unleashed didn't die with them. In 1987, Detective Paul Bynum put a gun to his head, leaving behind a note filled with dread. He wasn't just haunted by what he'd seen, he was terrified it would happen again. What if Norris had stayed quiet? How many girls would have screamed into that tape recorder? How many more bodies dumped like garbage just to watch the world react?